Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sueños to Success. This is the podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of resilience, transformation, and personal triumph. I'm your host, Dr. Victor Rios. Today's guest is a powerful voice for equity, social justice, education. From growing up in a working class community to becoming a leading advocate in the California State Senate, our guest today is Senator Monique Limon. Her journey is one of grit, purpose, and deep commitment to public service. Senator Limon is a champion for those who have been left behind. She's fought for education access, environmental justice, economic equity, and so much more. But what makes her story even more powerful is that she never forgot, never forgets where she comes from. She's used that experience to uplift others every step of the way. From Sueños to Senate, welcome, Senator Limon.
Thank you, Victor. It's great to be here with you today.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you. I know you have a busy schedule, and so I appreciate the time. A lot of our listeners are either young people that are trying to figure out their careers in life, maybe college students that are like wanting to go into politics one day, or maybe educators that are trying to inspire their kids. Hey, look at these stories of people that grew up in communities where maybe there wasn't a lot of access to education. Maybe they were first generation in their family to go to college. Maybe they were labeled in an ESL class and had to go through that struggle. And I want to start with your own journey in education because right now you're an incredible leader in our state of California. But one day you were a little girl in an ESL class, right?
Yeah, ESL class. Yeah.
What was that education journey like for you?
So I grew up here in Santa Barbara, born and raised. Parents are immigrants from Mexico. And in my household, we just spoke a lot of Spanish, right? We had Dodgers on, we had Sábado Gigante on. Like, I grew up in a household where Spanish was the primary language spoken. And one of the things that is, interesting and maybe sometimes troublesome is that some of the ways that kids get into school now are the same ways that they got into school 40 years ago, meaning parents fill out a survey. And so many parents proudly talk about how their kids are bilingual. And it turns out that that's the system that kind of funnels them into English as a second language. So now they're EL learners. We were ESL learners 40 plus years ago. And that's something that has stuck with me because even as someone that was born and raised here in this community, in this country, I knew how to speak English, so, right? Like I was speaking English. I started out with my classroom. In particular, when I was pulled out for reading and writing being all Spanish. And so I remember the being pulled out of class pretty vividly. And it's really interesting, the things that we remember through our education and schooling. And it didn't always feel great. You knew something was different because it was everybody else got to stay in the main classroom, but you were pulled out to
Mhm.
go do reading and writing differently. And this was something I remember. And I remember,
What do
oh,
you
this was
remember, like
kindergarten, first grade, second grade.
mm,
And I also had a teacher that I've talked a lot about, Mrs. Dalfonso, second grade teacher, Harding Elementary School, where I felt so included in the classroom.
mm.
And I loved her classroom. She recently, about a year and a half ago, gave me an award for that I was getting in the community through the Santa Barbara Education Foundation, and they didn't tell me that they were bringing my second grade teacher. So
Wow.
I teared up, and that was really special to me because I don't think we people always realize that some of these things that happen through our education and our schooling system leave like significant marks in our lives for
Mm.
good. And sometimes, just the experience is also challenging. So it was an incredible moment to get this award from her, but more incredible that I was like, I hope she sees that the second grade student that she invested in, who was an ESL student, who she did a phenomenal job of including me in the classroom. Like, with that kind of investment, I went from that student growing up on the west side of Santa Barbara, parents, immigrants, ESL student, to the state senator for this area. Like, I wanted her
Wow.
to be proud of me, but also of what so many me's can offer. And it was also a moment for me to see, like, look, it worked. Like, what you did in your classroom worked. And I'm a state senator and I still talk about you.
Wow. So
So,
you
yeah,
said so many me's can offer. What do you mean by that?
I think that oftentimes in our education system, kids, our students are put into categories: first generation, low income, migrant students, ESL students. I mean, athletes. And my own educational upbringing, my own personal upbringing, checked multiple boxes, and so I wanted her to see that, like, look, students who maybe were coming from a working class background, who maybe had parents who didn't go to college, who, were really trying, were ESL students with the right investments, could really turn out to be people who lead our community. Like, there was a yield, right, on that return to investment. And that's what
Yeah.
I wanted her to see. And look, she totally saw it. She got it. It was exciting. We both hugged each other really tightly. Um, and I also think that that's why I've been such a big advocate for education, because my own personal upbringing, there are things that worked and things that didn't. But I also believe it is transformational, and we cannot talk about education in anything less than that. It is transformational for good or not. Like, when things don't work also in the system, I mean, you know it better than I do. You're a scholar who looks at the evidence and the research. Like, when they don't work, there's lifetime outcomes that aren't always good. But when they do, the system works. And that's what we're trying to do so much, right? I feel like a lot of our time has been trying to figure out how to create a better system that works for a lot, for all of our students, not just for some.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just thinking of how you start kind of with the stigma, right? So like,
Mhm.
nowadays it's great, I think, in my opinion, and it's important to be proud of being multilingual. And in some communities, it's even more of a pride thing. Like if you speak like French and English, oh my goodness, you speak two languages. But somehow, because of how our population historically and today, some would argue even more so than in recent modern times, is really seen as an outsider population. No matter how, whether we're born here, our parents are born here, their parents are born, we're still seen sometimes as outsiders.
Yeah.
So to have a stigma on us early on as little children, like, hey, you're one of those. You see Santa Barbara, for instance, in the last few weeks, this is in the month of April 2025, we've had at least three hate incidents where Latina or Latino students are told, go back to your country, right? So we're in a time where the Latino population in this country is really painted as an outsider population.
Mhm.
But we've always had that kind of in the backdrop. And so being seen as these learners that are different and pulled out of class and separated. I was an ESL myself too. And just remembering like that feeling of stigma,
Mhm.
it wasn't a good, not only wasn't it a good feeling, it felt like, oh, I must not be smart enough to make it like these other kids are going to make, because they were getting pulled to go to GATE, and I
Mhm.
was getting pulled to go
Yeah.
learn more English, and like you said, I was watching Sesame Street,
Mhm.
like I knew my ABCs, I knew, but early on they were saying, "Hey, you have something more to prove to show you're an English learner." Today, I think that system has improved. There's so many incredible multilingual teachers that really respect all those backgrounds. And so I'm wondering what you think your teacher did different to really help get you beyond that feeling of being stigmatized.
I think when you realize that you're treated so differently, and then you go into a space where you're like, whoa, I'm not treated that differently. I'm included. I am answering questions and being called on like other students. I'm asking to lead a project or whatever you do in second grade, a coloring, right? Whatever it is, in that way. I just there were so many incidents where I remember being happy and I was like, "This is great." Like, I love this classroom and I love this teacher, and I attribute a lot, of that experience to the teacher who is able to identify ways to include all students despite whatever their academic, personal, family, whatever background is. And I think she did that well. I remember sitting on the rug with all the other kids as opposed to being pulled out of the classroom. I remember how happy she was. I remember her calling on me. And to remember this over multiple decades is also really telling. And it's the power of education. People remember their educational experiences. They remember the things that work and the things that don't work about it. And I think to your point, while we've made a lot of progress, we also have had, in the time that I've been around, right, we've also had a lot of different philosophies and opinions about students who speak multiple languages in the classroom. It is trendy, it is popular now. You will not find a dual immersion class in Santa Barbara County that doesn't have a wait list. That wasn't always the case. Growing up in the era of, English only, Prop 187, Prop, 207, like, the list goes on, right? You realize that there was othering happening, like, all throughout, and we know that young folks, kids, they pick up to what is happening in their environment, whether or not they're voters. This isn't about the propositions, but it's about the messaging that was being made, throughout growing up, and so I think that those are things where I can say that now. Could I tell you as a second grader all of this? Like, could I describe it this way? No, but I think that those are all part of the experiences that I think about, and I also feel like they're still real today. There are people who hear this story and say, "Wow, you speak English well."
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I had a professor, he was Japanese American and, 3rd generation from Hawaii. So, and he came to study to, Ohio for college from Hawaii, and he gets to Ohio, and, everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, you speak such good English.
Yeah,
You're being who you are," and so he writes about that, Professor Ronald Takaki, he writes about sort of the ways in which people, as you say, get othered, and the way in which maybe you're not seen as, like, a real American, and so much of our community helps to build, right? Like every other communities helps to bring together and build this country, that it's so important for us to put those stories out of people that saw our full humanity, like your second grade teacher, right? And included us and made us feel fully human. Because as you say, maybe we don't remember exactly what they taught us, but we remember how they made us feel.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is powerful, and that is still true today, and I think it's true in education. I think it's true in our healthcare space. I think it's true certainly in government space. People still remember how you make them feel
Mhm.
and the experiences they had, and those matter, and people have that impression, and that impression forms their future perception, um, and belief in our systems, whether it's education, healthcare system, government, you name it. I mean, those are all things that still matter, but they, I think, are more prominent because of the amount of time and place and our development as students.
Yeah. So second grade, little Monique, right? 2nd grade, feeling like likes to learn. Teachers got her all locked in. And then where does little Monique start to see her purpose, that she's going to college? I gather I think I read your first
Yes,
generation.
first. My parents did not go to college,
Okay.
so I'm first in my family to go to college, and I think it was a little bit later. So, shortly after being there, we transitioned over, from the West Side to the East Side. So then I went to Cleveland school, and, that journey kind of continued there. I will say that then I went into a classroom where, I had a teacher who I don't think was given the right support system, who, didn't really know what to do with me. And so that was a 180 experience. And I also remember that while I went from having like the best, remembering this incredible kind of learning experience, I went to also having really hard experience that included tears of just feeling
Mm.
so like I was really like,
What's an example
stupid.
of what she did?
Um, I it just, there was a particular situation where we were learning a rule, a grammar rule, and I couldn't catch on to it. Like, I'm sorry, the I after E, except after C, like, right, is not, like, intuitive,
Mm.
especially when you're when you learn to speak another language, um, first, and you learn how to read and write that as a result of the same system that's teaching you, not as a self-determined result,
Mm.
right, by the family. That's another thing. Like, we didn't make that decision. It was a decision that was made for me by someone else. And so I think that, just remembering how inferior I felt, like, "I don't belong here. I am not good enough for this teacher, let alone the classroom," feeling so odd, and so I think that that was, you know, all of those experiences are part of our history. They don't make you, I think, per se, I don't see them as like, "Oh, poor me." I see them as things that taught me and that I still talk about because I try to determine how we make it a better educational system, both for the professional and the teacher there and also the students. And so I think that it took a little while before little Monique went to to going from these different kind of educational
So you were
experiences
like on a roller coaster, like it seems
up
like,
or
yeah,
down,
like,
right? Like, okay.
hey, you don't belong in our system. You're kind of like over here. Actually, you do. We're centering you. I'm your second grade teacher, and I believe in you. And then the other one's like, I whatever.
Yeah.
I still don't get it. By the way, and I'm not there. And then, you know, grammar. I'm always being corrected at home. I won't say who corrects me, but she knows who she is. I'm like, hey, I'm a language learner. You
Yeah,
know,
you're
like
right.
I'm a forever lifetime language learner. But anyway, you're going on a roller coaster of education, and you get to a moment somewhere along that pathway.
And I think those moments continue to be influenced by pretty powerful teachers because I had a great teacher in 6th grade, Miss Cox, also still around. And I mean, that's the other piece. You can have an off year, but like it's incredible with the right like people in the right space how quickly you can pivot again, right? With
Mhm.
if all things else, are
Yeah.
accounted for.
And
I
that's
mean,
like life as well.
right, like, it's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you pivot, and I think that to your point, you just said that's like life. It is.
Mm.
Exactly, it is like life. You have highs, you have lows. How do you pivot? How do you persevere, right, in these moments? And and that's all it takes. It just took a little adjustment, and I feel like I went from, junior high to high school. In high school, I feel like that's where I really kind of came out a little bit more, like, I started to do more leadership things here or there.
What was the first leadership program or
So
club you were in?
in 6th grade, I was, like, part of the elementary school student council, right, type of thing, and our big thing that we did for Cleveland Elementary is we, changed our mascot, which was, like, so big, Cleveland Pumas to the Cleveland Dolphins, you know? It was
What?
huge for
Why
us.
would you change a Puma?
You know why? Because we read Island of the Blue Dolphins,
Oh, got it.
and it was a powerful book,
And y'all and the kids
and
were like, we want
we
the
want
Dolphins.
the dolphins, and the dolphins are here, right? It's a story about a Native American, young girl, and so, like, all I mean, these are all and we were connected to the story in a different way that, like, you had enough people, enough kids in that they were like, "We wanna be the dolphins," and
Did
they're still the dolphins, by the way.
did you write a letter? Did y'all meet with the
Yeah, we
principal?
met with the principal, like, the 6th graders were really cool because like, took it on, right? And I think we had to have, like, a big vote in the school.
Who mentored you all?
I mean, I think our teachers were like, "Okay, you wanna do this? Like,
Oh,
let's talk about it." And I think that they now looking back at it, they probably were like, "Wow, this is so cool." They got it from the book. There's an excitement about what they are learning that they actually wanna change something to match, right, what they've learned. So, that's my guess of what they were thinking then. I mean, I don't know that I thought that then. I was just like, "Okay, they're letting us do it. We're so cool." So that was, like, the big thing that we did in elementary school. In high school, I was, senior class president and junior class president. So I feel like I started, to see these possibilities
Mm.
of what I can do. I will say though that that was more a function of my interest in being part of a community, in the community, with the community, than it was to be a leader. Like, I don't think that that's how I necessarily saw it. Santa Barbara High School just named me their distinguished alumni of
Right.
for 2025, and I was cracking up at the quote that they put in, because one of the quotes they have there is that I didn't remember this, that in our yearbook I was voted most likely to be president. And
Wow.
I didn't
That's
which is
incredible.
so hilarious because that's not what I thought I was gonna end up doing in my life.
Mm. What
Um,
did you think you were gonna be?
be in education. I mean,
You wanted to be
I
like
wanted
a
to be
teacher?
in yes, and I wanted to be in the education system. I mean, I because you're as you hear me talk about how much I believe in the education system, how powerful I think it is, the potential it is, but also at the same time recognize some of the challenges and flaws it has, like, I really believe that this is where I was gonna go, and so I I did that work. Yeah, that's where we met, right? I did that work for 14 years, worked at our community college, worked, at UCSB, and, I think both you and I mentored students differently, right, at UCSB, and what you learn so quickly, and it doesn't matter whether they're UCSB students or whether they're elementary, junior high, or high school students. Whatever happens outside of the classroom shows up in the classroom.
Mhm.
And I saw that repeatedly. And I saw these patterns of it didn't matter whether I was working for Cal Soap in our community and I was working with junior high school kids or whether I was working with students who were, graduate students. If something is happening outside of that classroom, it's showing up.
Yeah,
And so it's real. Life is real.
yeah.
Healthcare issues are real. Housing issues are real. Economic issues are real. Environmental impact issues are real. Immigration issues are real. I mean, the list goes
Yeah.
on. And I
Wage inequality
rage
issues are
right.
you've
I
been
mean,
incredible at passing legislation to protect the way in the equity within how people pay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
That's a really big one. I
yeah,
mean, and so all of these things come up when you're
yeah.
working with students one on one. Here you are thinking that you're going to help them edit, a paper or their application to a fellowship or whatever. And then you're like talking to them, you're like, whoa, hold on. There's a lot happening
That is
here.
powerful. So you were on the ground, in the field, in the trenches, working with day-to-day students that were struggling with all of these things you just mentioned, and maybe not very consciously, but in a way, you were architecting what you would be doing to promote them and to represent them and to figure out solutions to those issues later on as a politician. Whereas you were seeing the problem, but maybe you didn't have a lot of solution except for helping people one on one.
Right. And so I think what I was trying to do at that time was how do I help them? So I believe that nonprofits, like serving on nonprofit boards, was a better, like a way to also keep helping the students, the scholars, the families that I was working with. And so I got involved with different nonprofit organizations here in town. And I believe wholeheartedly, like I still didn't see myself as an elected official.
Wow.
Even in those times, I saw myself as someone who thought, "Let's also try to help and solve for some of these issues that I'm seeing show up at UCSB, at City College, at Santa Barbara Unified." Became a school board member because of my passion for education, because of my commitment to the community, um, and just started to see that, yes, our nonprofit sector is very helpful in helping solve, um, problems. They're not always designing the policies or laws, right? They're on the other end of it. They are, "Here are the policies and laws. Here's what our community is going through. Let's figure out how to aid."
Who's the politician? I know your parents, right,
Mm.
didn't go to college,
No.
but in the family, there's always a politician. Who's the politician in your family?
I mean, it's me. I didn't have anyone in
Who's
my
like
family.
who like? advocates for people, who's like standing up,
Oh,
arguing, like pushing the boundaries in the household and the extended family.
I mean, so my parents come from a really big family. So
Uh-huh.
while it's only my brother and I, my dad comes from a family of 11 siblings and my
Wow.
mom from 12. So I have lots of cousins. So here's the other thing. I am the eldest grandchild on my mom's side of the family, and I'm the first in either side to go to college. Like of all my cousins, my mom, so
Wow.
I think that that's
That's what we have in common by the way.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
feel like there was something along the way where I do think people would say it was me, and I also wonder if I I didn't know that, but became the politician in the family because I was also in this weird generational gap where I am closer in age to some of my aunts and uncles than I am to some of my cousins. I am the first, right, grandchild. And so all of a sudden, my access to our education system, our professional system, our systems of government was like, oh, here it is. Like you might be it, but I didn't have anyone who formally like there were definitely people in our family who we have gone to seek advice and support. Like I think a lot, about my aunts and uncles of just like, yeah, that's who I go to. I still go to them for advice. Because I think that there is um there is knowledge and sabiduría, right? As we yeah.
Sabiduría. Oh my goodness. How do you translate that?
I
It's
was
like
trying to figure it
it's
out.
deeper. That's why you said it
It's
is it's
deeper than
deeper than
knowledge.
knowledge, right?
It is deeper than
It's like
knowledge
it's like
that you
Yoda.
go yeah,
It's like Yoda, sabiduría. It's like
yeah.
whatever Yoda does is sabiduría, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's deeper than just knowing something and transferring.
no college degree will give you that.
Yeah,
That's why you can go to I'm
yeah.
assuming, right, some of the uncles and aunts that don't have
Yeah,
a
that don't
college
have
degree.
and they give you feedback, and so I think that this was I was very and continue to be very, very, very blessed to come from a very big family, and those blessings come to me, not just in the form of numbers, but in the form of how they understand life, the ways that they support me now as an elected official, as a mother, as a wife. I think that I feel very, very blessed. I also think that one of the things that my big family has taught me a lot about is that I mean, I think anybody would say that we're big, so we don't all agree, and that's normal. We have learned how to be a family, how to be in community, how to disagree and break bread at the same time, and that's something that seems harder and harder these days.
Yeah.
I think politics are significantly more polarizing than they were when I started, but I also feel, again, very blessed and thankful to a family, to a space that I grew up in where we have very different ideas and opinions and experiences in this world. But we've always found a way to come together as family and not let those things be the things that divide us or keep us from breaking bread together. If anything, we work harder to try to get past it. And it doesn't mean that someone doesn't roll their eyes. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't turn around. I mean, it's all ideologies and spectrums, right? At that table. And to me, that is beautiful, but that's
But that's also America too, right? And we come from familial culture where
yeah,
we're gonna back each other up no matter
yeah.
what, where we're gonna stick together no matter what. And if someone's, in my case, growing up, single mother, father not around, but I would just go next door to knock on my uncle's house, and he had 6 kids, and he was a recycler, cans and
Mhm.
bottles. My Uncle Ruben, somehow they always had a seventh plate of food on the table for me because they knew I was hungry. They raised me. They fed me. And you're gonna do that regardless of whether you get along with your siblings or cousins or nieces, nephews. And I think that's something I think as a community that is important for us to continue to teach the rest of America in the sense that as a society, as a country, as citizens, as Americans, we gotta stick together. We gotta support each other. We gotta be a safety net for each other in a way that those of us that come from familial cultures understand. working class people of all backgrounds by default have to rely on extended networks and not just the nuclear family, the 4 people at home, but
Mhm.
outside, the neighbors, and that's what makes, I think, our country great in that at its best, we're all supporting each other during natural disaster, during times of crisis. We're all there and for each other. And I think, again, when you come from a culture that does that, you just learn how to help others. And that's just part of your service. That's just what you do. It's a part of life, it's a way of being. And you carry yourself in that way. And I highly, highly respect that, admire that about you.
Oh, thank you, and you're right. I mean, that's who we are at our best, and so we strive to be the best despite the fact that every day I wake up in this job with really big challenges that our community is facing with huge issues, and that's what centers you, this idea and belief that you can strive for the best even when you know you're not achieving it. You're looking at how do we inch our way there, and what is that like? And I think that that is so important, but also, I mean, I don't want. It's also really hard
Yeah.
to do, and it's hard to achieve, and it's also not the same, you know, element that centers everybody, that's doing this work.
Yeah.
But I think it is one for me, and, I mean, this is also a community I grew up in. It's a community that's invested in me.
Yeah.
It's a community like, this is right? And so there's some pieces where I'm like, "Of course, I'm honored, I'm proud to represent the community." I'm
But you left for a little bit. You went to Berkeley.
I did, I
You
went
went
to
to
Berkeley, I
You
went to
went to New
Columbia.
York.
I got my yeah, so I
2
left.
really, high echelon places. I
Ye
went to Berkeley
well,
too,
I
so I'm
was
not
like,
gonna talk it down. But but what made you come back? You could stay in New York, you could stay in the Bay Area.
I could've and both the Bay Area and New York are phenomenal places. Lots of love, for the Bay Area and for New York. And it was always about coming back. I mean, that was I don't think I ever questioned it. Uh,
Mm,
my education was such a big milestone for my family. And I don't know if you remember Chicano Latino graduation at Berkeley, where
the
two
Gr
people
at the Greek
at the
theater?
Greek theater where two people get to come up with you. So I took my mom and dad. And so
Yeah,
I remember how amazing this was. This was the closest thing when they walked
yeah,
me down, right? That aisle was the educational aisle, to see me get my diploma. And that was one of the most special things, and in our family, we talk a lot about, like, when one of us goes to higher ed, we all go. Like, it's like you're bringing the whole family along, and that's kind of how it has felt also professionally, right? Like, we're all in this together. The whole family is in this together, and that means the extended family too. Just had someone, I got sworn in December of, 2024 for this new Senate term. And I told some of the folks, hey, I have a bunch of people that are here. It's just family. It's not like all my family,
a
but it's
bunch.
a bunch. And I just had the wife of one of my colleagues say, oh my gosh, when I saw your bunch was 35 people, she's like, I couldn't even believe it. And I
This
was
was
like,
all family?
but it wasn't even, like, all of my family. It was just those that, like, could take a
I'm
Monday
sorry,
off
I
in
just
Northern
I have
California.
to say, you're a real Mexican.
I am, like, and that is I find that, like, to be beautiful
Yeah,
in the sense of, like, we are like, we family is a big deal, and I do, and, here I am, um, a
yeah.
senator, like, with a daughter, and I bring my mom and dad with me
Love it.
to all kinds
Yeah,
of places, and my colleagues are like, "Hey," they know my parents now, and I'm like, "Because this is how we do it. We do it with our community." And it does take a village, and I'm proud of it. I'm
yeah,
proud of that.
and it's a resilience factor that, is beautiful in our culture, but that can be replicated across all America and all Americans because there's so much isolation in our country. There's so much just people having to rely on themselves. The self-reliance world, like I'm a lone wolf and that's okay. And I'm going to try to make a living. and I can't count on anyone. I'm not gonna reach out to my neighbor. I'm not gonna reach out to my loved ones, my family, extended family. I'm just gonna try to self-rely. And as my good friend Love Jefferson likes to say, um, the lone wolf goes into the forest and dies.
Mm.
And so we have to have a wolf pack. And it's beautiful to see you have your family as a wolf pack.
Yeah, I feel like my family, my friend circle, still really close to my friends that I met at Cal. They are very important,
Yeah.
and they have been incredible support. This job is not easy.
Mm.
This job, you really have to believe in the work that you are doing because it has only gotten more difficult, I think, with time. And so to have,
Not easy, but high impact.
high
You're
impact.
able to make changes on tens of millions of lives in the state of California
Yeah.
if the right law passes.
If the right law, I think it's consequential. It's also there are consequences, right? There is outcomes for the work that we do. And so it's also important that in those moments you do have people who are the people who ground you, the people who uplift you, the people who provide that support, that feedback, and who are also, connected to the community. I talked about how
Mm,
humble and honored I am, and at the same time, how accountable I am to this district. Like, this is home.
yeah,
My roots are here.
yeah,
My family's here. So I better be trying to do the best that I can,
yeah.
right?
What do you say? Let's say in this district, right? You represent all of Santa Barbara County, a big part of Ventura County, right? What's that new little, you said many me's. I love that.
Mhm.
Many me's, like multiple me's. Like that teacher wasn't only helping me, but setting a role model example of how other teachers could help other little Moniques that would one day make it, but you didn't know if they would because their family was immigrants or whatever, right? They didn't speak English right or whatever it was. And you spoke English right, but you were labeled like you didn't speak English right. So for our listeners or young people out there who maybe are on that path, they're like wondering like, hey, could I ever be a state senator? Like what were some of those defining moments when you realize like, you know what? I have to do it. It's a hard job, but I have to go all the way up there to the state capitol to represent.
There were multiple defining moments, and I will say that there's a lot of research on women who are in office, and there are times where I wish that I would not have done what the research says I was going to do, but it turns out I did.
Mm,
And so one of those examples is that the research has found that a lot of women, instead of just saying yes immediately, they seek, um, you know, v- kind of support and validity to see, like, am I even a good candidate?
mm,
So they term it like they ask for permission. You know, can they run? And I did that. Like,
mm,
I did that. You and I know we've both worked with Annette Cordero, right? She's someone who I met with. She was on the school board. I
mm.
said, Annette, like, I've never run for office. Like, am I, you know, would my profile be someone that like people would accept? Do you think that
Am I
like
good enough?
am I good enough?
Yeah.
Like, do I have what it takes? And so I did that, very early on, met with Salud Carbajal. I met with, different folks in our community and asked, like, what do you think? Like, I'm so different. And here's the experiences I have. And I think I did a little bit of that too when I ran for assembly and, from assembly to Senate. Um, and it's not easy, but I also and I acknowledge that because I want folks to know that even even when you feel like, well, of course you're qualified, you've done this, or when someone else tells you, there are still those moments when you yourself doubt yourself. And so you doubt whether or not like you're good enough. You should be doing it, you shouldn't be doing it. You seek approval from others. And that happens a lot in a lot of different spaces. And sometimes I think when I walk into a room, people are like, "Oh, this is Senator Monique Limon." It is it comes with the title and with ideas of what people think I am, but it sometimes is not reflective of who I have become and the challenges, and the obstacles I've overcome to get here. It's just this, like, fancy title. The senator's in the room.
Mhm.
Well, it turns out that senator has like, it took a lot to get here, a lot of
Yeah.
people to support me. There were moments of doubt, there were moments of wondering if you're making the right decision or not, and at the end of the day, the moments that kept have been the moments that both have kept me going, um, and also were moments that were instrumental in getting me there is I believed that I'm doing the best I can for a community that I know well. And I
Mm.
remember someone asked me at one point when I was trying to determine if I was gonna run for one thing, they said, "Stop. Do of all the names that are out there, do you really believe that you could do it better? That
Mm.
you have a unique experience that would better serve that community?" If
Mm.
the answer is yes, that is the permission.
Wow. I
Like,
like that
and it
approach.
was the answer that only you were answering, and so it was also reflecting, like, you don't actually need other people's permission.
External validation.
It's you give yourself permission
Validation. That's
to,
powerful.
and so I think that that was, and that's happened. That certainly happened, and there's a lot of considerations too
Yeah.
as well. Again, I've talked a lot about my family support. I'm a
Yeah.
pretty non-traditional woman, like having this job, right? And so, my husband and I talk about it. He's an educator himself, over 20 years, working in higher ed as well, and we talk a lot about these things that drive us. And that's the other piece. I'm not the only one making sacrifices to do this work. Our
Mm.
family is making sacrifices so that, and it has to be because we believe that we are doing the best we can for the most amount of people in the communities that we represent.
Mm.
Um, and that's another piece that, like, they come along with me on this journey, but they also sacrifice with
That's
me on
true.
this journey.
Yeah. So you're making big changes for the entire population of the state of California, regardless of their background, race, ethnicity,
Absolutely.
income. Um, so you're a state senator that represents everyone, and you happen to be Latina. And Latinos like yourself are still vastly underrepresented in politics. You know better than I do. According to a 2023 report from the Latinas Represent Initiative, although Latinas make up 9.3% of the U.S. population, they account for less than 3% of elected officials nationwide. California's a little bit better. We've seen gains
Mhm.
because of trailblazers like you. Latinas still hold only about 12% of the seats in the state legislature. So when you're thinking about sort of these barriers, and you talked a little bit about it, like who's supporting those women that are trying to make a difference and will will know that they have to make some sacrifices, right? What are some of those sacrifices that you've had to make?
Yeah. So I'm the first Latina to represent this area ever in the history of the state. And, I will say there's a lot of first. I'm also the first Latina to chair banking and finance, only the second woman. I am only the second woman to come into the Senate with a newborn. Um,
Wow.
and so these are in history, like in the history of California, right?
So
And of our,
hold on,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. You have a newborn
Mm-hmm.
baby,
Mm-hmm.
and when you say that, you're literally going into the Senate with your baby, right? At times?
Well, I didn't. I actually did not take my baby to the floor because this was during COVID, so there was
Okay,
way like,
okay.
but my child has grown up coming to Sacramento with me. Yes.
So
To Sacramento.
now
Not on the
she's
Senate floor, but yes. Mhm.
yeah, going to
Yeah, to Sacramento,
traveling with
traveling with
you.
me. Yes.
That's
She,
incredible.
and these are all first. So I think what has been so powerful about that is not that any of that has been a limitation. There is not one parent. I mean, and there are millions of parents here that don't have their hustle on. It looks different for all of us, but we all know as parents, like, everybody has to have their mommy, daddy, grandpa, whatever, right? Whatever role they play, hustle on. And so I think that that's also the truth to this. that as I reflect in terms of, what it's been like for me, I also look around and I see a lot of parents who get it, who are like, "Yep, I get the after school care. I get that if my child's sick, like I'm going to have to think about daycare. I get that I'm juggling morning drop-offs, pickups in issues. I get that I'm scheduling." So that doesn't make me any more different than individuals. It actually, I think, if anything, there's a lot of people that I can relate to and that can relate to the experience. Yes, it looks different for me because I have to be in Sacramento on a regular basis. But I also think that, look, the struggle and the challenges for parents are all different. I, my struggle, the challenge is the commute to work. Other people have a struggle of putting food on the table, a
Mm,
roof
mm.
over their head, stable housing. There are people who serve for this country that leave and don't see their kids for months or years. We need to recognize that this isn't a competition of struggle. It's just an acceptance that we all have different struggles, and it's okay to want to address and help all of them,
Yeah.
right? Whatever that issue is.
You're like a you're like a superhero, just like
I
looking out.
don't know about
You're
that.
looking out for everyone. No, no,
If I'm a superhero, then every parent is a superhero. Let me just be
indulge
real.
me for a
I only
second,
got one
right?
kid.
So yeah, but let's talk about that, right? Because you're like the superheroes looking out for the California population, right? And you're looking at like employment, equity. You're looking at environmental justice. You're looking at all these incredible childcare. You're looking out for
Mhm,
little babies, making sure that they get their little TK education, pre-K education, so that they're not behind when they start school.
mhm.
By the way, I dropped out. I had an 8-year learning loss. Dropped out of high school, but I was able to catch up starting junior year when I got back into school. And I remember that the teachers that taught me the most were my Head Start teachers.
Mm,
They taught me not just to like my ABCs, but they taught me to believe that I was a good reader, even though I didn't know how to read. And later in junior year, even though I had lost 8 years of learning, because I was completely checked out starting in third grade, dropped out in eighth, ninth, 10th. I remember their voices in 11th grade saying, "Victor, you're a good reader." And I would just like catch up on my work. Ended up going straight to undergrad after high school, even though I had an 8-year learning loss. But all to say that early childhood education is so important,
so
and
important.
you're such a big champion of it. Um, and how does it feel? This is a superhero question. Now you got a little girl that
Mhm.
shadows you. And I know that you would agree with you're not agreeing with the statement that you're a superhero, right? Because 'Cause you're
Not
so
a
humble.
No,
Wait,
because
hold on,
I'm
hold on.
not,
Well,
because
hold on.
my
Wait,
struggle is just
but
as
guess
real
what?
as anybody else's.
I bet you would agree with this statement. Now you got a little girl following you, and you definitely want her to have those superpowers, and you're trying your best to model to her how to be a leader in this society for herself and her larger community. So what's that feeling like when you're marching her really through the halls of power? She's this little girl like absorbing it all in.
I will say I don't think my daughter knows what I do. And she doesn't know, right? And I think that both while I think she's gonna look back and see these historical pictures taken when she was, in the state capitol, or she'll talk about her experience in Sacramento. As a parent, you think about all of it though. You think about the amazing opportunities, but you're also asking yourself, am I taking other opportunities away from her because she's
Mm,
doing this?
yeah.
I mean, I think parents are always in that boat. Like, am I doing good? Am I not doing good? Right? Like, you're kind of trying to figure out. And so I think that it's both. I think that children humble every parent.
Mm, that's a
I
good way
mean,
to
it is
put it.
so humbling. Like,
Yeah.
you realize, yes, your strengths that you have, but man, you also realize, that it's also really hard. Like, it's just hard, right? To be a parent. And that doesn't matter whether you're traveling or not, whether you're an elected official or not. There are hard moments in parenting. And so I think all of those combined keep you grounded. But I also think I have really strong opinions right now about early childhood education. Opinions that are both in line with work we've done, but opinions that are about some of the changes that are needed. You talked about the Head Start program. Right now, at this moment, I am leading a bipartisan effort with other leaders from both sides of the aisle to save Head Start
Yeah.
because it is on the chopping block.
Yep.
And because I mean, I know my husband and I always talk about this. We both went to college. We both have master's degrees, and we have done so much to provide for our child. But when our child got into a high quality infant, toddler, preschool setting, wow, do they know what they are doing?
Mhm.
To see your child develop so quickly when they are in this space, you're like, it's incredible.
Yes.
Like, you see these
Yes.
developmental outcomes so quick. And so you also realized if kids are not getting
Yeah.
this, this is what they're missing out.
Yeah.
And so this is why this experience is also like, "Hey, we're going in." And it's not a partisan issue. Both sides of the aisle, we're signing on to these letters asking our representatives at the federal level, "Please do not cut Head Start," because we see the lens of what early childhood, education does for kids in their lifetime.
Yep.
I mean, they're able to catch so many things. They know how to talk to kids. They know how to get them to
Yeah.
advance, from fine motor to large motor to verbal. Like, I mean, the list goes on
Yeah.
in terms of how much they know. And I also realize like it's not just saying this is like good for the kids. It's, for right now. We in our society have sometimes treated early childhood education as a babysitting daycare
Mhm.
approach.
Yes.
It is not.
No.
It is a foundational, educational, developmental space to help our kids. You remember that in your experience, you were told you were a good reader. You've never forgotten that.
Yeah. Yeah, and they would always say, "You're good," like, it's like plant these little seeds, like, not you're going to be, but you are.
Mhm.
And I was like, "No, I'm not." And they're like, "Yes, you are. In the making." I remember, like, there was, like, a little growth mindset back then, and I was like, "No, I'm not." And I go home and try to read to my mom, and she was too tired and busy, but I didn't just imagine reading, and then I imagine, like, writing, and then I stopped from 3rd grade to 11th grade, reading or writing. And now, I've authored 10 books and I still don't like to write. But I remember those voices of those teachers when I'm having a writing block or a writing
Yeah.
struggle. And they're very soothing voices. Like maybe your second grade teacher, right? It's like, Victor, you're a good writer.
Yeah.
Victor, you're a good reader. And that just hypes me up because there's something deeply psychological at that stage where you start to develop your identity as a thinker, that if you're just hanging out at someone's house, someone's backyard that isn't equipped to teach you those skills, you lose. And who's losing is our working class children.
Yeah.
And they're losing because those of us that can afford for our kids to go to some, high quality one, and we have to like take out loans to do it,
Yeah.
but we can afford it. Our kids are in the advantage,
Yep.
and you're right to do right by all children in the
All
state
of
of
that. No
California.
matter their background, no
Yeah,
matter the income, this is an investment. And it's such an important investment for all of our community, right? It is for them, but it's also for us.
yeah,
It is like this is who we prepare, how we prepare. They are our future. And I don't say that just, as a
yeah.
thing. I mean it. This is how we want to educate, to prepare, to provide this foundation for them. And so yeah, this is
That's
this
great.
is this
That's
is among the many things I do, it's one of the things I do,
sounds
and
like
I
a
feel like
big passion
it is.
here.
It's
That's
become a
great.
very big passion area of mine, especially because after COVID, one of the things that I saw that was different was that for a long time, women were the leaders of early childhood education, and championing that work. And then in COVID, when economic experts from around the world said you must reopen schools and childcare facilities in order for any economic, health in this country, it became more embraced. And now you see lots of elected officials from all sides of the aisle, men and women, talking about it. But for so long, women
Yeah.
were the loudest voices saying early childhood education
There's,
matters.
yeah.
And now we also know it doesn't matter just for the individual, it keeps our economic health in place. Like,
That's
this is an
powerful.
economic issue as well.
I'd like to take this time to introduce you to my book, Street Life Poverty, Gangs, and a PhD. Check it out. It's on Amazon. It has my own journey and some helpful advice on how to overcome adversity. All right, Senator Limon, it's been a wonderful conversation. And I know our listeners are out there hearing us talk about all these great topics from culture to uh, uh, being a parent to family, all of these great things. And I'm wondering, um, being that you're a trailblazer, a role model for so many people out in the state of California and beyond, what message would you like to share with that next generation of young people that they want to go into politics? They want to be leaders. They want to make change. They've seen what you've done. They admire it, and they want to be like you. What message do you have for them?
I think it's, for the next generation of leaders, I want our next generation to know that there is a place for them in leadership. That whether leadership is going into office or serving in a different capacity, the time is always the present. People sometimes tell our young folks, when you graduate college, when you are in the real world. Like, I've heard these messages over and over, and I absolutely believe that leaders are always, formed in the present, not in this aspirational future. Like, you can lead now. And being an elected official is one type of leadership. It is not the only leadership role. It is not the only thing that matters. I see leaders that I look up to that don't have an elected official title next to them, but that are leaders in every single space, that are in our education system, in our housing system, in our private sector, in our public sector. These are leaders. And so if we wait for a time that is right, if we wait for when things are better, there's a belief that you have to, like, that leadership is conditional to a future, as opposed to leadership is the ability to lead in that time, in that space. And it's going to look different for all of us at different times. And that is also very okay.
Mm. So you heard it, folks. There we have Senator Monique Limon. I don't know how she does it, but she does it all. She's a
I
parent.
don't.
She's an incredible state leader. She's passing important legislation out there. She inspires our local communities and our statewide communities. She represents not just for her own culture where she comes from, but for all peoples of the state of California. She's got those big degrees and is humble about those big degrees. She's done great work, stayed in the grassroots in her early career, and now has gone on to, of course, be a presence in that leadership world. So, to our listeners, I hope this conversation reminded you that public service isn't about perfection. It's about passion. You heard some of that passion come out right today in the conversation. It's about standing up. Senator Limon stands up for those that need it the most. It's about speaking out. And you heard her. She said, look, you speak out now. You don't have to wait until you graduate college. You don't have to wait till you're in high school in some club. You speak out now, no matter your age, no matter where you're at. So whether you dream of the Senate, a school board seat, or just being a leader in your own community to make change, um, your voice matters a lot. And you can't say you don't have role models because here we have Senator Limon being one of those great role models. Thank you for tuning in to Sueños to Success. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep fighting, and keep lifting each other up. Thank you, Senator Limo, for being
Thank
here.
you. This was great. This was so much fun.
Thank you. That was fun. I appreciate it.